No one expected the Queen of Valzar to declare war over a simple insult, especially not Commander Ray Thorne, the lone human representative sent to the Intergalactic Peace Forum. His crime? Smirking, just once, during a speech made by Queen Saraxa, the feared war ruler of the Valzar Empire. For her, a human smirk was worse than a spit to the face. But what no one knew was that the Queen was planning something long before the insult. She didn't just want war. She wanted humiliation. She wanted to make an example of humanity. And Ray was chosen. The alien sky above him rumbled like a living beast. Purple clouds swirled as giant banners of the Valzar Empire flapped violently in the storm. Ray stood on the rocky outpost of Rendak Fief, surrounded by 6 alien guards with sharp halberds aimed at his back. "You mock our queen with that smile, Earthling?" one of the guards hissed. "Today her might will crush your bones." Ray said nothing. He only flexed his sore shoulders and kept walking. Inside the war arena, thousands of Valzar citizens filled the Blackstone seats. The structure was circular, enormous, and ancient, once used to tame beasts. Now it would host a duel between a single human and Saraxa's personal warrior, a champion named Zareth. And Zareth was not just any soldier. She stood 8 feet, tall, with armored scales down her back, 4 golden piercings through her chin and eyes like molten steel. Her body was strong and curved, graceful yet deadly. As she stepped forward in the sandpit, even the most fearless in the crowd leaned. "Back, human," she growled. "I was ordered not to kill you, but I will break you." Ray chuckled under his breath. "Is that a promise or a threat?" The crowd gasped. Even the translator drone stuttered. High above, sitting on her crystal throne, Queen Saraxa narrowed her glowing eyes. She had planned this to be a moment of total humiliation. Ray was supposed to cry, crawl, and surrender in front of everyone. Then she'd offer him as a pet to one of her nieces. But Ray's calm smile, it irritated her more than the insult ever had. "Begin," she commanded. Zareth moved fast. Not just fast, blindingly fast. She spun, kicked, and struck like a warrior trained since birth. Her blade, long and curved, slashed through the air, missing Ray by inches. But Ray didn't fight like her. He didn't leap. He didn't roar. He watched, calculated, dodged with strange human rhythm, predictable yet unpredictable. His movements were tight, smart, and efficient. He didn't overpower her. He outsmarted her, and after 10 minutes of exchanging blows, it was Zareth who was panting, bleeding, confused. In a sudden motion, Ray rolled beneath her blade, grabbed her leg, and used her own weight to flip her onto the arena floor. A shocked silence fell over the crowd. Zareth was on the ground. The human had won. Queen Saraxa rose from her throne in disbelief. "Unacceptable," she hissed. But the laws of Valzar were ancient and unbreakable. If a royal warrior lost to a challenger from another species during public combat, a bond of shame must be paid. And that bond was marriage. Zareth slowly looked up at Ray from the sand, blood running down her lip. She didn't seem angry anymore, only confused, embarrassed. Something else flickered in her eyes, something close to respect. Ray reached down, offering her a hand. "Still want to break me?" Zareth took his hand in silence. The crowd murmured in disbelief. The Queen's lips curled into a snarl. "This isn't over," she whispered coldly. But deep inside, she already knew something had changed. The war she started for pride had just taken a strange new path. The audience didn't cheer. They didn't clap. They simply stared in stunned silence. A human had just defeated Queen Saraxa's strongest warrior in open combat. And according to the ancient rules of Valzar honor, that meant only one thing. The defeated warrior must marry the victor. Zareth stood beside Ray now, her face unreadable. Her breathing was steady, her pride wounded. But she hadn't protested. Not once. That alone made the crowd even more nervous. Queen Saraxa's hands gripped her throne tightly. How Dare this human challenge our ways, she said in a low voice barely audible to her advisors. This is our law, Your Majesty, said the Prime Keeper nervously. It cannot be undone. The arena was sacred ground. Then change the laws, she growled, but even Syraxa couldn't do that. The Valzar Empire was built on tradition. Breaking the warrior's bond of shame would spark a rebellion within her own court. Already some of her ministers were whispering, and so the Queen was forced to say the words she never thought she'd say. Let the wedding preparations begin. Rey was escorted, not in chains this time, to a royal chamber with black crystal walls and silver flames flickering in alien sconces. He didn't understand everything going on, but the look on the Queen's face made one thing very clear. This was not a happy wedding. Zareth stood at the door, arms folded. Her muscles twitched like she was still trying to decide whether to punch a wall or punch herself. You're not what I expected, she said finally. Rey raised an eyebrow. What did you expect? A coward? No, a corpse. They stared at each other. Tension filled the air like smoke. Then she surprised him again. You didn't fight to kill me. You fought to understand me. Rey nodded. You were never my enemy. Just someone following orders. Zareth looked away. Now we're bound. I serve you. That's not how marriage works. At least not where I'm from. She glanced back, eyes narrowing. And where you're from? What does a warrior wife do? Rey smiled. Depends, but usually not kill her husband. Later that night, as the palace buzzed with angry nobles and rushed rituals, Zareth was summoned to a private chamber by the Queen herself. Syraxa stood by the dark window, her eyes glowing in the moonlight. You allowed this human to defeat you? She asked coldly. No, Zareth answered calmly. I lost fairly. You humiliated me, Syraxa hissed. Before my people, before my enemies. I fought to the best of my strength. You held back. Zareth didn't respond, because deep down, maybe she had. Syraxa walked forward, her robes shimmering like liquid steel. This is not about marriage, she said. This is about control. The humans must remain beneath us. If they start believing they are our equals. She trailed off, then added, You must break him, in private, in silence. Make him regret his victory. Zareth's eyes darkened. He didn't break me. He helped me stand up. The Queen's face twisted with rage. You're growing soft. No, Zareth said. I'm beginning to understand strength. The next day, Zareth led Rey through the ceremonial hall of warriors. Old statues of long-dead champions watched them in silence. Valzar priests painted ancient red markings on Rey's chest, arms, and forehead. The symbols were old, older than Earth. They meant claimed, equal, bound. At the end of the hall stood the wedding altar, made of beast bones and meteor stone. It wasn't romantic, it was primal, but Rey didn't flinch. When Zareth took his hand in front of the whole empire, her fingers didn't tremble, her voice didn't crack, her honor was wounded, but she didn't hide. I accept this bond, she said loud and clear. Rey repeated the words. I accept this bond. The Queen didn't clap, but someone in the crowd did. Then another, and another. The sound grew slowly, reluctantly, but it grew. Later, back in their new shared chamber, Zareth stood near the balcony, watching the twin moons rise. Rey leaned against the wall, arms crossed. So, does this mean I'm a prince now? Zareth smirked for the first time. Don't push it, they both chuckled quietly, but deep inside they could feel it. This wasn't just about marriage anymore. Something had begun, something bigger than both of them, and far away, in the shadows of space. Someone else was watching. In the dark throne chamber of the Valzar Palace, Queen Syraxa paced alone. Her fingers tapped on the steel armrest of her seat. Her people had witnessed the impossible, a human defeating her greatest warrior. And worse, accepting the marriage bond with pride. It was spreading. Whispers in the streets, curious questions in the council chambers. Some were starting to ask, are humans stronger than we thought? That question was dangerous, so the Queen made a choice. She would destroy Raythorn, but without using a single weapon. She called for her most trusted manipulator, a long-necked alien named Varsen, master of psychological warfare. You must divide them, the Queen said. The human and Zareth. Their bond must break, quietly, emotionally, publicly, if possible. Varchen blinked slowly. If I may ask, my queen, why not just execute him? Because if I kill him now, Saraxa replied, he becomes a martyr. But if I make him seem like a coward, weak, unworthy, my people will forget his victory, and Zareth will lose her honor again. That's how we win. Varsen bowed. As you command. Meanwhile, Ray and Zareth had just moved into their new quarters. Unlike before, this was no prison, it was a decorated suite made for two, yet the energy between them was odd. Zareth stood by the training mat, arms folded. Ray sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing his temple. We need to talk, she said, voice low. About what? This bond. I don't understand it. Ray looked up. Neither do I, but I'm trying. Zareth hesitated. You didn't want this marriage, you were forced. Ray replied honestly. Maybe, but that doesn't mean I'm not willing to give it a chance. That surprised her. She didn't respond immediately. Later, while Ray trained alone in the courtyard, Vartan approached him with a scroll in hand. Message, he said. From Earth's delegation. Ray raised an eyebrow and opened the scroll. It had the seal of Earth's ambassador, but the message inside was strange. You must leave immediately. The Valzar intend to use your marriage to Zareth as a trap. Your life is in danger. Return to Earth. Alone. Ray didn't react. He knew something felt off, and that's when he noticed it. The seal was smudged. A small detail, but one an actual ambassador would never allow. It was a fake, but instead of confronting Varken, Ray smiled and nodded. Thank you, I'll consider it. That night, Ray didn't mention the message to Zareth, but she sensed something different in him. He seemed distant, quieter. You okay? She asked. Yeah, he replied. Just tired. Zareth didn't push further, but in her heart she felt a tiny shift, like a thread pulling loose in the fabric of trust. The Queen's plan had begun to work. The next morning, news spread through the palace halls. A human ship had arrived outside the system, secretly, illegally. The Queen herself stood in the command tower, staring at the glowing screen. Is it from Earth? Her general replied, No, not directly. It's an unsanctioned transport. Possibly mercenaries. Possibly loyalists. Queen Saraxa smiled darkly. Send a false message. Tell the people it's a rescue ship for Ray. Make it look like he's trying to escape with help from outside. And if he isn't? She narrowed her eyes. They won't care. That evening, Zareth was called to the Queen's private chamber. She didn't trust the summons, but she obeyed. Zareth, Saraxa began smoothly. Do you know where your husband is? Zareth frowned. Training, I believe. The Queen handed her a data pad. On it, a grainy image showed Ray speaking. With a shady figure, Varchen in disguise and holding a scroll, Zareth's eyes tightened. What is this? Saraxa lied easily. Evidence that your human is planning to leave you. He thinks we're animals. He wants to run. Zareth didn't say anything, but the anger in her chest burned quietly. She didn't know it yet, but the Queen had just planted a poisonous seed between them. Later, when Zareth returned to their chambers, Ray greeted her as usual, but she didn't respond. He noticed her coldness. Something wrong? Nothing, she replied flatly. He approached her slowly. Zareth, talk to me. She turned to him, eyes burning. Are you planning to leave? Ray blinked. What? I saw the message, the scroll. You were meeting someone in secret. Ray paused, then sighed. I knew it was fake. I was waiting for proof, but she didn't believe him. Were you? Or are you just saying that now? The distance between them suddenly felt like a canyon. And in the shadows of the palace, Varchen watched through a hidden lens, smiling coldly. Ray sat in the cold silence of their shared room. Zareth wasn't speaking to him. She wasn't looking at him either. The atmosphere felt heavier than the strongest gravity field he had ever trained under. He stared at her back as she stood at the edge of the balcony. Her arms crossed, her spine tense like a bow pulled tight. Zareth, he said softly. You don't really believe I'm running away, do you? Her voice was quiet but sharp. You were seen with a known manipulator. You had a message in your hands, and now a secret ship appears in orbit. Ray stood up. That message was a trap, I knew it. That's why I kept it, to show you. Then, why didn't you tell me? She turned, her eyes fierce. Why hide it? Because I didn't want you dragged into another one of your queen's games. He didn't mean to raise his voice, but he did. And now the damage was done. Zareth narrowed her eyes. You don't understand our ways, you never have. Ray looked straight at her. Then teach me, damn it, don't shut me out like this. But Zareth was already walking away toward the door. I need air, she muttered. And just like that, she was gone. Alone now, Ray clenched his fists. Everything he'd built, the fragile trust, the growing bond, it was starting to collapse like a poorly stacked tower. He looked down at the scroll again. Fake message. Planted spy, a trap. And it had worked, at least. Partly. In another part of the palace, Queen Syraxa watched the tension unfold through a hidden surveillance orb. She leaned back in her throne, sipping dark violet wine from a claw-shaped goblet. Varchen stood beside her, looking pleased. You were right, he said. Their bond weakens. Syraxa smirked. Now, we strike hard. She tapped her fingers against the throne. Leak a rumor that Zareth is to be reassigned. Tell the people she's been ordered to guard the outer colonies. And the human? Let him hear it, accidentally. A few hours later, Ray was training alone in the gravity chamber when 2 palace guards passed by, speaking just loud, enough for him to hear. Did you hear? Zareth's leaving next cycle, reassignment, outpost duty. No way. That's exile. For a warrior, she must have done something terrible. Ray froze. His blood boiled. He marched straight out of the chamber. Meanwhile, Zareth stood before a familiar training statue, one she used to practice with before every big battle. She punched it again and again, her knuckles bleeding slightly. She hated this. Not the pain, the doubt. For the first time in her life, she couldn't tell which direction was right. She didn't hate Ray. She didn't fear him either. So why did her chest ache every time she looked into his eyes? She wasn't used to these feelings. Trust hurt hope. Then she heard footsteps behind her. Ray. Why didn't you tell me you were leaving? He asked, breath short. She blinked. Leaving? I heard you're being reassigned. Outpost duty. You were going to walk away without saying a word? Zareth stepped back. That's not true. I haven't been reassigned. But Ray cut her off. Then why the silence? Why the cold shoulder? You don't believe me. You don't talk to me. And now you're supposedly disappearing. Her voice rose. Because I don't know what to believe anymore. A pause. Ray's chest rose and fell. So that's it then? You think I'm just some lying human who tricked you into marriage? She clenched her jaw. No. I think you're someone I started to believe in. And now I don't know if that was a mistake. That hurt worse than a blade. Neither of them spoke for a full minute. Then Zareth turned away. Maybe. Some space is what we need. Ray nodded tightly. Fine. He left the room before she could see the anger and heartbreak in his eyes. That night, both slept alone, different chambers. Same thoughts. Neither could rest, and neither knew that someone had just planted a listening device beneath the bed. Someone paid by the Queen's shadow spies. It was all part of the plan. The next morning, palace bells rang, a royal announcement. Ray was summoned to the grand hall. He stood tall, emotionless, but something in his gut warned him. This isn't a meeting. It's a setup. Zareth stood beside the Queen, armored, stoic. Syraxa smiled with poison behind her perfect teeth. "Human," she said sweetly. "We have uncovered a secret plot, one that involves you." Ray's eyes narrowed. "I'm listening." "A ship entered our system. You met someone in secret, you received a message. These are facts. Under our law, such actions can be called preparation for betrayal." Ray took a step forward. "And your law also says false accusations can be punished." Syraxa grinned. "Which is why you'll get a chance to prove your innocence. In the trial of truth." Zareth's eyes widened. That trial was not just dangerous, it was deadly. And Ray? He didn't back down. He smiled, cold and sharp. "Fine, let's play." The grand hall had transformed overnight. Its polished floor was now a cold black pit surrounded by glowing pillars and ancient runes. This was the sacred arena used for one purpose only: the trial of truth, a dangerous test where the accused must survive a series of brutal tasks while under observation. Not to test skill, but honor. No armor, no weapons, no lies, only pain and truth. Ray stood in the center of the pit, his shirt removed, his eyes calm. His only protection was the belief that his actions were just, and that Zareth, somewhere deep inside, still believed in him. Above, the Queen sat high on her throne, dressed in ceremonial armor. Her face was still, but her mind burned with quiet victory. To her right stood Zareth, stone-faced, her gaze locked on Ray, unreadable. The Keeper of Trials stepped forward, holding a long staff with a glowing orb. "Begin the first task," he called. Task 1. The path of fire flames burst up from the floor, creating a winding path Ray had to cross barefoot. The fire wasn't hot enough to kill, but enough to blister skin and test the will. Ray stepped forward without hesitation. Each step burned, each movement shook him, but he clenched his jaw and kept walking. The audience watched silently. Many hoped to see him fall, but he didn't. He reached the end of the path, smoke rising from his feet. Task 2. The Pillars of Memory, a set of psychic stones lit up in a circle. The trial's next phase required Ray to relive key memories. Painful, real. His thoughts would be projected into the air above for all to see. He stepped into the circle. The first memory appeared, his sister's funeral. Ray's expression didn't change, but his eyes shimmered. Then came his training accident, when he nearly lost his arm saving a fellow soldier. Then finally, his first days on Valzar, how the guards mocked him, how he was treated like dirt, yet never reacted with hatred. Zareth's fists clenched as she watched. This wasn't a spy. This was a man with pain and dignity. Task 3. The Beast of Judgment. Large door creaked open. Out stepped a terrifying creature, 10 feet tall with tusks, horns, and 6 eyes glowing red. Known as a truth fang, it could sense deceit. It would attack only if it detected a lie in the accused's heart. Ray didn't run, didn't flinch. He stood before the beast and spoke. "I never planned to betray Zareth." The creature sniffed. Him snarled, paused. Then it lowered its head, a sign of truth. The crowd gasped. Even the Queen leaned forward slightly. But the trial wasn't over. Final task. The bond blade, a ceremonial dagger, was brought forward. It was curved, ancient, and wrapped in royal cloth. The rule was simple. The accused must place a drop of blood on the blade while thinking of the one he loves. If the blade glows blue, the bond is true. If it turns black, it means betrayal. Ray took the blade. He looked up, straight at Zareth, and whispered, "I'm not perfect, but I never lied to you." He sliced a line across his palm and let a single drop fall on the blade. It sizzled, smoked, and then glowed bright blue. The chamber filled with shocked murmurs. Zareth's eyes went wide. Queen Syraxa's lips parted slightly, but she said nothing. The keeper raised his staff. Verdict: honor cleansed. The human has spoken true. The crowd erupted in stunned silence. Then a few clapped, then more and more. Cheers broke out, not loud, not wild, but real. Something had shifted. Again. Ray collapsed to his knees, exhausted. Blood, burns, and sweat covered him. Zareth rushed forward, without command, without fear, and dropped beside him. "You idiot," she whispered. "You should have told me sooner." He smiled weakly. "Would you have believed me?" She paused, then touched his burned hand gently. "Maybe not, but I believe you now." Back on the throne, Queen Syraxa stood and raised a hand. "This trial is over," she said coldly. "The human's honor is restored." But inside, she was shaking with rage. Her plan had failed. Again. And worse, now the people didn't just respect the human, they cheered for him. She turned away and whispered to her guards, "Activate Protocol Silent Thorn. If I can't break him with lies, I'll crush him in secret." Far below the palace, in a sealed chamber, a dark figure emerged from a frozen pod. Tall, silent, built for killing, a forgotten weapon, awakened once more. In the deepest vault of the Valzar Palace, frost coated the walls. The air hissed with cold vapor as ancient locks unsealed one by one. Out stepped Project Varix, a humanoid assassin born from forbidden science and deadlier than any warrior alive. His skin was pale blue, muscles carved like stone, and his eyes glowed like twin icicles. He didn't speak, he didn't blink, he only waited. Queen Syraxa watched through a one-way screen above. "Your target is the human," she said coldly. "Make it look like an accident. Do not let Zareth interfere." Back in their chambers, Ray lay on the recovery mat, still sore from the trial of truth. His bandaged hands rested over his chest. The blue light above dimmed as he drifted in and out of sleep. Zareth sat nearby, silent, watching him. Everything had changed in one day. She saw the truth with her own eyes. The pain Ray carried, the patience he had shown, the strength no one gave him credit for. He had earned her respect, and something deeper she was afraid to name. That night, while the palace slept, Project Varix moved. No doors opened, no footsteps echoed. He simply passed through shadows, undetected. He arrived outside Ray's chamber. The guards were gone, bribed, ordered to take a break. Inside, Zareth dozed lightly in the chair beside Ray. Varix didn't care. His hands sharpened into claws. A needle emerged from his right arm, coated with neurotoxin. Fast, silent, undetectable. He raised it toward Ray's throat, but something snapped inside Zareth. Even half asleep, her warrior instincts screamed. She lunged, just in time, and blocked the needle with her forearm. It sank in deep. She gasped, and fell. Ray shot awake, disoriented. "Zareth?" Varix didn't pause. He pivoted and aimed a blade straight at Ray's chest, but Ray rolled, grabbed a chair, and smashed it into the assassin's side. It barely slowed him. Ray grabbed Zareth's limp body and backed toward the wall. His heart raced, her skin was going cold. Varix approached slowly, calculating. Ray knew one thing: he couldn't win this fight head-on. So he did the next best thing. He ran. Carrying Zareth in his arms, Ray raced through the palace halls. The assassin followed, silent, deadly, unstoppable. Ray turned into a storage wing, ducked behind shelves, and activated the emergency fire suppression system. Cold mist burst everywhere. It gave him a few seconds to think. Zareth's pulse was weak. Her eyes fluttered. She whispered, "Varix." Ray held her tighter. "You know him?" "Assassin. Forbidden project. Only activated by royal command." That meant one thing. The Queen had just tried to murder her own champion's husband. This wasn't politics anymore. This was war. Ray found an old combat suit in storage. It was alien tech, clunky but usable. He dropped Zareth inside a healing capsule, locked it shut, and turned. Varix stepped out of the mist. Ray didn't wait. He charged. The fight was brutal. Varix didn't feel pain. His body absorbed hits like a machine. Ray used every trick he had, redirecting force, using the environment, triggering power doors, setting fire traps. Each time, Varix adapted. But Ray wasn't trying to win. He was trying to stall, long enough for the healing capsule to stabilize Zareth, and finally, it beeped. The lid opened. Zareth stepped out, still weak, but her eyes burned with fury. She looked at the assassin and growled, "He's mine to protect." Then she charged. The sound of battle shook the hallway. Ray and Zareth fought side by side. Blades, fists, teamwork. They moved like one. Zareth leapt over Ray's shoulders, slicing at Varix's neck while Ray punched the control panel, electrocuting the floor. Varix screamed, a sound like metal tearing, and fell, still twitching. But he... down. They stood over him, panting. Ray looked at Zareth. "Are you okay?" She nodded, wincing. "Better than him." Ray touched her arm. "You took the hit for me." "I don't regret it." A pause. Then she added softly, "I never should have doubted you." Ray smiled faintly. "Guess we're even now." That night they didn't speak much, just lay close in silence. No guards, no spies, no lies. Zareth whispered one final thing before sleep took her. "She tried to kill you, through me. That means we're both enemies of the crown now." Ray didn't blink. He simply replied, "Then let's bring the crown down." Far away in the Queen's private chamber, Syraxa watched the failure unfold on her screens, her goblet shattered in her hand. "You want war, human?" she whispered. "Then you'll get it." The morning light touched the blackstone towers of the Valzar Palace, but inside the great halls, silence was deadly. After the failed assassination attempt, the Queen had ordered the palace gates sealed. No one entered. No one left. And no one spoke of Project Varix. The official story? An accident during Ray's trial recovery. The truth? An assassination ordered by Syraxa herself. And now, Ray Thorn and Zareth were no longer honored guests. They were watched, trapped, and marked. Ray sat at the edge of the palace fountain, sharpening a broken blade he had taken from the trial room. Zareth stood nearby, her wounds almost healed, but her heart still boiling. She had served the Queen her entire life, fought in her name, bled in her name. And now that same Queen had tried to turn her into a widow. "I never thought I'd say this," Zareth muttered, "but I want to see her fall." Ray looked up. "Then we'll start the fire together." Zareth blinked. "You really believe we can do it?" "I don't know," Ray said honestly. "But I'd rather die standing beside you than bow to her again." They didn't know that someone was listening, a silent figure hidden behind the old garden walls. Her name was General Arica, once a rival of Zareth, now secretly disgusted by the Queen's growing cruelty. She had witnessed the trial, watched the crowd cheer for a human, and started asking dangerous questions herself. Now she stepped forward. "I heard what you said," Arica whispered, "and I think you're not the only ones who feel that way." Zareth snapped to alert. "You spying on us?" "No," Arica said. "I'm choosing sides." Ray narrowed his eyes. "Why now?" "Because the Queen's power is built on fear. But when fear breaks and the Empire cracks," she handed them a data crystal. "It contains the proof of the assassination order." Her voice, Her signature. Ray took it slowly. You could be executed for carrying this. Erika smirked. So, could you? I guess we're all enemies of the crown now. Later that night, Ray and Zareth met with Erika in the forgotten catacombs beneath the palace. Dusty corridors, old resistance symbols, history buried in stone. There, a secret group had already gathered. Old soldiers, young warriors, disillusioned, staff, even one of the Queen's own advisors. We are the Broken Crest, said a tall alien with half his face burned, and we've waited years for someone to spark the rebellion. Ray looked around the circle, then light it, he said. Plans moved fast. They couldn't attack the Queen directly, not yet. But they could send a message, expose her, force the people to choose. Zareth stood in the center of the war table. We need to release this data crystal. To everyone. The people must hear her order to kill an innocent man. Ray added, and we need to do it during the next royal speech, hijack the tower's signal. Erika nodded. That gives us 2 days. Meanwhile, in the palace core, Queen Syraxa sharpened her claws over a star map. She had heard whispers of unrest, of silent gatherings, of General Erika's betrayal. Let them gather, she told her guards. Let them whisper. When they rise. She dragged a claw across the map. I will burn them all. The day of the speech came fast. Ray wore dark armor now, not ceremonial, real armor, scarred from past use. Zareth wore her old war captain's cloak, symbol of power she had once given up. Now she took it back with pride. They moved through the palace halls like ghosts, silent, planned, deadly. At the top of the signal spire, Erika disabled the security. Ray inserted the crystal. The Queen was already mid-speech on the central platform, speaking to thousands. And though some question our power, we remain united. Suddenly, the screen behind her flickered, her voice changed. A recording played. Eliminate the human, make it look like an accident. If Zareth interferes, take her down too. The crowd gasped. Whispers rose like thunder. The Queen turned, frozen. Then the booing began and someone shouted, Traitor! Another, Murderer! Then, Long live Zareth! The Queen screamed, Seize them! But the guards hesitated. Some didn't move. Some even backed away. The fear had cracked and the Empire had begun to bleed. Zareth appeared on the stage beside her. She stared Syraxa in the eyes. I swore to protect my people. You only protect yourself, Syraxa snarled. Then you'll die with the traitor. But Ray stepped beside Zareth, blade in hand. Not today. The guards rushed forward, but half of them turned, a split, a rebellion, and a battle began in the heart of the palace. Ray fought side by side with Zareth, deflecting blades, dodging fire blasts, using every skill from Earth training to survive. Zareth moved like lightning, taking down 3 elite guards in seconds. Erika's rebels joined the chaos. And above the sky dome, the people of Valzar watched their queen retreat for the first time in history. Ray stood on the tower as the last of the guards fled. Smoke rose, flags burned, and the people chanted one name. Not Syraxa's, Zareth. She turned to him, tired but alive. What now? She asked. Ray smiled, a little blood on his lip. Now we build something better. The fires had burned through the night. The battle was over, and the throne stood empty. For the first time in centuries, the Empire of Valzar had no ruler. The Queen, Syraxa, had fled the palace with her most loyal elites. No one knew where she was hiding, but for now the capital was no longer under her control. What remained behind was silence, smoke, and uncertainty, and at the center of it all stood Zareth, armor stained, eyes tired, heart still burning. Ray walked beside her across the quiet throne hall. Rubble covered the marble floor. The giant banners of the crown lay torn on the ground. This isn't a victory yet, Zareth said softly. Ray nodded. But it's a beginning. Guards knelt when she passed, not because of fear, but because they chose to. That was new, and it meant everything. The people demanded answers. The nobles demanded order. The warriors demanded leadership, but no one, not one voice, called for Syraxa's return. Instead, they all looked at Zareth. General Arika stood before her in the great hall that evening. You led the resistance. You protected the innocent. You exposed the tyrant. She paused, then kneeled. And now, you must lead us all. Others followed. One by one, they bowed. Even former enemies. Even those who had once mocked the human she had married. Zareth stared at the empty throne. Her voice was low, unsure. I never wanted the crown. But the people want you, Ray said quietly. She looked at him. I'm a soldier, not a queen. He smiled. Then be both. That night, Zareth stood before the crowd from the central balcony. Thousands filled the streets below. Ray stood at her side, silent, watching. She raised her voice. Not as a ruler, but as a warrior who bled for them. I fought for a crown that betrayed me. Now I fight for all of you. I won't be your queen unless you choose me. The silence that followed was short. Then came the roar. Zareth! 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 And just like that, the old empire died. And something new began. The coronation ceremony was simple. No gold crown, no false rituals. Instead, Zareth wore the cloak of unity, a symbol from ancient times when warriors ruled by respect, not bloodlines. She didn't sit on the throne, she stood in front of it. I will never rule from above, she declared. I will walk beside you. Ray watched, proud but quiet, until Zareth surprised everyone. She reached for his hand and turned to the people. This man stood when no one else would. He faced death, he exposed the lies, and he fought for our honor. I do not rule alone. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Then she said the words, He is not just my husband, he is now your defender. Later that night, in the quiet of their new private chamber, Ray finally exhaled. No one trained me for this, he muttered. Zareth smiled, untying her braid. Same. They sat together on the edge of the window, overlooking a city still glowing with hope. Ray spoke again. Think Syraxa will come back? Zareth's expression hardened. Yes, one day. And when she does. Zareth touched the hilt of her blade. We'll be ready. For now, though, peace. Real peace, not silence before war, but the kind born from pain, rebellion, and trust. In the far distance, across the cold stars, a dark ship slipped through uncharted space. Inside, Queen Syraxa watched the recordings from her escape pod, Zareth crowned, the people cheering, the human beside her. She stared at the screen for a long time, then whispered, I gave you a stage to fall, human, but you rose instead. Next time, I'll bring an army. 3 months had passed. Zareth ruled not from fear, but from unity. Ray, now called Defender of Valzar, trained the new generation of soldiers in both alien and human tactics. Together, they had changed everything. The streets were no longer silent with fear. Citizens spoke freely. Guards smiled. Even the war banners had been replaced with peaceful emblems, 2 crossed blades over a rising star. But peace never lasts forever, not when the past still breathes. At the edge of the galaxy, in a dead zone, known only as the Grave Spiral, a fleet stirred, dark, massive, silent. At the center of it floated a new warship, black as night, shaped like a blade. Inside stood Queen Syraxa, no longer in royal robes but clad in full war armor. Her skin was paler now, her hair shorter, her voice colder. This time, she whispered, I won't aim for the heart. I'll crush the spine. Behind her stood new allies, alien mercenaries, rogue scientists, exiled nobles who still hated the idea of a human influencing the Valzar throne. And at her side, a rebuilt Varix, sharper, faster, no emotion, no hesitation, only death. Back on Valzar Prime, Ray had just finished a training session with young cadets when Arika burst into the chamber, breathless. They're back, she said. Ray's smile faded. How many? An entire fleet. We picked up their signal near the moon base. Zareth entered seconds later, already suited in light armor. She didn't need to ask. She already knew. Siraxa. An emergency war council was called. Everyone gathered. Generals, advisors, engineers, even citizens' representatives. Zareth stood at the head of the war table. We expected this. She would never accept defeat. Ray leaned forward. But we don't fight her like she fights us. We don't just kill, we protect. That's what makes us different. Arika added. Still, we need defenses active in all sectors. She won't strike the capital first. She'll weaken us from the outside. Zareth nodded. Then we hold the outer rings. Ray looked at her. Let me lead the first response team. She paused. You've already done enough. Not yet, he said, quietly. I know how she thinks. She won't expect me to face her head on again. Zareth met his eyes, then nodded once. Then you go. But not alone. 2 days later, Ray's ship, the Shield Light, left orbit with a small elite unit. Zareth stood on the platform as he left. He didn't promise he'd return. She didn't ask him to. Their eyes said enough. As the ship entered deep space, alarms suddenly blared. Enemy fleet approaching, fast. Ray stood on the bridge, staring at the screen. Dozens of dark ships, and in the middle, the largest one, marked with a red crown, Siraxa. She appeared, on their comms, her face filling the screen calm and terrifying. Well, the human dog still runs at the front lines, she said. Ray folded his arms. Nice armor. Shame about the soul. Siraxa didn't blink. I gave you mercy once. Now I'll give you legacy, ashes in space. She cut the signal, and the battle began. The stars lit up with fire. Ray's ship darted between massive cannons, his team launching pods, dodging blasts. But it became clear, this wasn't just a fight. It was a trap. Siraxa had known he'd come. From behind, Varix 2.0 launched in a stealth pod, slicing into the hull mid-battle. He moved like a shadow. Ray turned a corner in the corridor and came face to face with the assassin. The same cold eyes. The same silent rage. The fight was brutal. Ray used plasma batons, shield walls, even oxygen canisters. But nothing slowed Varix down, until Ray lured him into a gravity flip chamber. He activated the switch, and suddenly, up became down. Varix slammed into the ceiling-turned floor, stunned for a moment. Ray didn't waste it. He plunged a stun spear into the assassin's chest and sealed him inside the gravity field. Not dead, but trapped. I don't die that easy, Ray muttered. The enemy fleet began to fall back. Mission failed, trap broken. Ray sent one last message back to Valzar Prime. She's coming, and she's not alone. Back in the palace, Zareth stood over the communication table, fists clenched. She wants me to panic, she said. Arika nodded. Then what do we do? Zareth stepped back, her eyes clear. We don't panic. We prepare. Far away, Siraxa stood at her war table, watching her fleet pull back. She wasn't angry. She was patient. This was only the first breath. She told her generals. The real war begins on the ground. The skies above Valzar Prime turned red, not from sunrise, but from the return of war. Queen Siraxa's full fleet had entered orbit. Dozens of black warships formed a ring around the planet. Her signal blocked all outer communications. This time she wasn't hiding. She wasn't whispering. She had come to take the crown back, by fire. In the palace war room, Zareth stood over the city maps, fully armored. Her warriors waited silently, but their eyes burned with resolve. Every district has shields, Arika reported. The people are armed and ready to defend. Zareth nodded. We won't lose this city. Not again. Ray stepped in, bruised but alive after his near-death fight with Varix. I found her weakness, he said, setting a data chip on the table. Her power core, it's unstable. We hit it from the ground, we can stop her flagship. Zareth looked at him. You're thinking of going up there, aren't you? He didn't deny it. Zareth sighed, stepped close, and pressed her forehead to his. "Come back to me," she whispered. Ray smiled. Always. The final plan was simple and dangerous. Zareth would lead the city's ground defense. Ray and a strike team would infiltrate Syrax's flagship from below, destroy the core, and trigger a chain reaction. No more retreat. One last battle. The dropships launched like arrows. As Ray descended through the atmosphere in a stealth pod, he looked out at the stars. He thought of Earth. He thought of Zareth. He didn't believe in fate. But this felt like destiny. Inside the flagship, Syraxa stood on her black throne, surrounded by guards in silver masks. She watched Ray's approach on the screen, smirking. "He still thinks like a hero," she said. Her general replied, "Shall we destroy his pod?" "No. Let him land." She leaned forward, eyes glowing. "I want to kill him myself." Ray's pod slammed into the lower hangar. He and his team spilled out, weapons ready. Gunfire erupted. Ray moved fast, leading with precision, ducking between walls, disarming sentries, placing charges. They made it to the reactor core, a glowing sphere of unstable energy, but it was guarded by Varix. Again. The rebuilt assassin, even stronger than before, dropped from the ceiling like a demon. Ray signaled his team to finish the core while he took the fight alone. The battle was like dancing with death. Ray dodged blades, countered strikes, used the gravity trick again. But Varix had adapted. Ray was bleeding, tired, weakening, until a blade pierced Varix from behind. Zareth, she, had come. "Miss me?" she said. Ray coughed a smile. "Took you long enough." Together they fought Varix, husband and wife, warrior and human, striking in perfect sync. Zareth smashed his leg. Ray drove the final spike through his spine. Varix fell, silent forever. The reactor exploded behind them, controlled, precise. The ship began to tremble. Zareth and Ray sprinted toward the throne room. They had one last thing to do. Queen Syraxa waited, alone, no guards, no weapons in hand, just rage. "You ruined everything," she hissed. "I gave you a new empire," Zareth said, "one built on truth. You let a human infect our blood." Ray stepped forward. "Funny. You tried to humiliate me. And now look at you." Syraxa screamed and charged. Zareth fought her. Sword against sword. Years of training. Betrayals. Rage. In the end, Zareth didn't strike the killing blow. She disarmed her, knocked her down. Syraxa looked up, defeated, but it was Ray who stepped forward. He didn't raise a weapon. He just looked her in the eyes. "Now you understand. Real power doesn't come from fear." He turned away. Zareth gave the order. "Arrest her. Alive." Back on Valzar Prime, the war was over. The ships retreated, the people cheered, and the new world began. Weeks later, Zareth and Ray stood before the Galactic Peace Council. A Valzar queen and a human husband, equal rulers side by side. Zareth addressed the crowd. "We were enemies once, then strangers. Now we are something greater, partners." Ray added, "And maybe proof that humans and aliens don't have to fear each other." Applause thundered through the chamber. That night, back in the palace, Zareth removed her armor. Ray handed her a cup of tea. "For once," he said, "can we enjoy some peace?" Zareth smirked. "Maybe a day or two." They stood on the balcony, hand in hand, staring at the twin moons. Two worlds, one bond.